What's up everyone, Darcblade here returning with another Mass Effect 3 multiplayer class guide. In this episode we're going to be taking a look at a character I passed over for some time, the Vorcha Soldier. I have mainly overlooked him because of his similarities to his counterpart, the Vorcha Sentinel. But he is in his own right highly durable and a good close range damage dealer. Now, like all my characters in the game, I spec the Vorcha Soldier for the harder difficulties in the game. I start out by maxing out the Vorcha's signature move, Bloodlust. I put points into regeneration over movement speed and melee. This is to give more survivability and health regen. The movement speed is nice, but I feel the melee damage is not as useful in the way I will be using this guy. Next, I put points into power damage over weapon damage. Both of these options are good, but as I will be intending to use the Flamer more on this character, power damage should be more beneficial. Lastly, I put points into health regeneration over melee damage. Like I said, I will not be aiming to get melee kills with the Vorcha Soldier, and health regeneration adds to his survivability. Next, I max out Flamer. I put points into armor damage over shield damage. The harder opponents in the game all have armor, while a smaller amount have shields, making armor damage a better option in my opinion. Next, I put points into damage over duration. I still want Flamer to be dishing out a lot of damage, and sometimes duration can be not as useful when considering you can turn off your Flamer manually in order to create new fire explosions and give yourself a shorter cooldown timer. Lastly, I put points into reach over damage. The Flamer has a very short reach. Putting points into extra reach means you can damage enemies without getting too close to them. A lifesaver when faced with enemies who can sync kill you like phantoms or banshees. Next is Carnage. I skip out this ability. It can give you some nice range damage capabilities, but I feel that the Vorcha Sentinel benefits more from this simple build I am using here, rather than trying to add Carnage into the mix. Carnage would allow you to set off your own fire explosions, but I still prefer the build I am using here over taking Carnage. Now, with the passive abilities, I say these are down to personal preference. I start by maxing out Vorcha Resilience, putting points into weapon damage, power damage, and then damage and capacity. This will mean my Flamer is doing a lot of damage and give me a little bit of extra weapon damage for when the Flamer is on cooldown. I also max out fitness, putting points into full health and shields. This, added with Bloodlust, will mean that the Vorcha Soldier will be hard to take down and can potentially fulfill a tanking role. He will need this extra health and shields, as he does need to get up close to enemies to be at his best. As for the weaponry, go with something that can add to your close range capabilities. I went with the Riga Carbine, as it feels like a second Flamer. When your Flamer is on cooldown, use your weaponry to fill in the gap in your damage output. You could take another long range weapon if you wish, but if you weigh yourself down too much, you won't be able to take full advantage of the Flamer. As for your gear slot, go with something to increase your tech damage output or weapon damage output. Anyway, let's get into the heart of the episode and talk about the Vorcha Soldier's moves and abilities. Its first ability is Bloodlust, a key ability for all Vorcha in the multiplayer. Bloodlust is an ability, once activated, will stay activated until turned off manually. Bloodlust will send the Vorcha Soldier into a frenzy. This will increase the Vorcha Soldier's movement speed, melee damage, and above all, give the Vorcha Soldier health regeneration. This effect can stack up to 3 times with each kill. Of course, the stacking effect will wear off if you go for long periods without getting a kill, resulting in a return to the basic Bloodlust. You know Bloodlust is activated due to your loadout being covered in red veins. Also, you will know when you receive a stack of Bloodlust thanks to the Vorcha Soldier roaring aloud. One important thing to remember about Bloodlust is that the bonuses of Bloodlust will only kick in after you get your first kill. One big downside about Bloodlust is that when it is activated, all power usage is slowed down by 60%. Despite the power slowdown, Bloodlust is a great survivability tool that allows the Vorcha Soldier to take a fair amount of damage, and even tank once you have enough stacks. The next ability available to the Vorcha Soldier is Flamer. This is a wonderful close range ability that can destroy opponents. The Vorcha Soldier will fire from its Omni tool a powerful short range flame plume that will persist until its maximum duration is reached or until cancelled out manually. Cancelling the Flamer by pressing the Flamer ability a second time will result in a faster recharge timer of the ability. This is useful when faced with opponents who die quick and you need to turn off your Flamer. Flamer has some insane damage, especially if spec'd into increasing the damage. Opponents who are caught in the flame will take a stacking damage over time effect that will result in most opponents being destroyed very quickly. Flamer will also deal out more damage to armoured opponents. Even Banshees and Atlases will go down pretty quickly to a full blast from a Flamer. Also, opponents caught in the fire will be set up for a fire explosion. The fire explosion can be set off by teammates or by Carnage if you have put points in the ability. A fire explosion is when an opponent is primed by a tech ability, such as Flamer, and followed up by being hit with a second direct damaging ability. Then a fire explosion is created, dealing extra damage to the initial target as well as anyone else around them. Unfortunately, only one fire explosion can be set up per use of the Flamer. So, to set up a second fire explosion, you need to deactivate your Flamer and then use it again quickly. It gets a little annoying after a while, and it can be more useful to just let your Flamer run its course when faced with tough opponents. The Flamer does have some downsides though. Firstly is that it is a close range ability. You have to get up close with opponents to get the most out of it. Bloodlust does help keep you alive when relying on Flamer, as you are likely to take extra damage by being up close with opponents. Be aware of sync kill opponents too. You can spec the Flamer to have a little bit of extra range at the cost of damage, and I think it's worth it. Lastly, when using the Flamer, you cannot take cover. Again, this can result in you taking extra damage, which is kind of a pain. To counter this, try to use soft cover by staying close to walls, corners, and other objects that will potentially stop incoming fire. The last ability available to the Vorcha Soldier is Carnage. Now firstly, I didn't put points into this ability to simplify the Vorcha Soldier's build and focus on close range damage and survivability. This being said, Carnage can be used if you're willing to sacrifice points elsewhere, or you wanted to play the Vorcha Soldier as more of a long range type character. With Carnage, the Vorcha Soldier will fire a vicious blast at opponents that will rip them apart. This will deal an okay amount of damage, as well as deal additional damage to armoured opponents. It will also leave a mild damage over time effect on opponents. This is not mentioned in the power description, however. Carnage also comes with a little blast radius, meaning that Carnage can hit multiple opponents if they're close together. Carnage can also be used to both set up and set off fire explosions, like I talked about earlier in the video, although it can't be used to set off its own fire explosions. Carnage also has a slight homing function, meaning that it can arc around corners to hit opponents if aimed right. Now, like I said, I haven't put any points into Carnage to keep my build simple, but also because Flamer can dish out a lot more damage, you won't have to rely on your power cooldown timer as much, you can carry slightly heavier weapons thanks to your passives, and you gain more survivability from having maxed out Bloodlust and Fitness. Now, as for the passives, these are down to personal preference as normal. With Vorcha Resilience, I went for increasing all power damage. This will result in your Flamer being more powerful than it already is. The remaining points I put into increasing my weapon damage. If you only have a low level weapon though, taking weight reduction might be more beneficial. With Fitness, I max out health and shields for extra survivability. This will be needed when having to get up close and personal with opponents with your Flamer. As for weaponry, like I said at the start of the video, take something to add to your close range capabilities, as it will fill in the gap in your damage output when your Flamer is on cooldown. You can take a long range weapon if you wish, but your aim is to get close to opponents with this build I use. Now, the Vorcha as a race are not the best looking of races. They have quite a frightening appearance, but they are very unique and useful. They have very low amounts of shields, but to compensate this, they have a fair amount of health. Also, unlike other races, due to Bloodlust, they get a wonderful health regeneration that most other races lack. They have a nice dodge mechanic in the Vorcha Pounce. Using all available limbs, the Vorcha Soldier will leap out of the way of incoming fire. It is also fun to use the Pounce when running towards opponents for fun. Their melee abilities are fairly strong. Their light melee is a constant flurry of slashes with their Omni-Tool claws. Their heavy melee, on the other hand, is a pouncing attack with both Omni-Claws. Overall, the Vorcha Soldier is very similar to the Vorcha Sentinel, but I feel that with this simple build, no nonsense build I'm using here, you can focus on dealing out insane amounts of damage at close range. You can also fulfill the role of tank in your team, as long as you can keep up your stacks of bloodlust. Taking Carnage will add some finesse and long-range capabilities, but when compared to the raw damage that Flamer can do, and the survivability you get from full fitness and full bloodlust, it doesn't seem worth it. The Vorcha Soldier and his Flamer are a very good choice for your close-range damage dealer in your team, and well worth trying out if you don't mind the simple build. Anyway, I've been Darcblade, bringing you my Mass Effect 3 multiplayer class guide to the Vorcha Soldier. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.